Ladies and gentlemen, I think I should first try to set your minds at rest. When Hugh had a word with me a little while ago to invite me to declare this exhibition open, we had some conversation about the nature of the event and what he might like, and it was agreed, I can assure you, that it would be a few words. And I was nonplussed when I saw the invitation to see the phrase guest speaker. That reminded me of the Saturday editions of the Belfast Telegraph, which have a page or two of the guest speakers and guest preachers on the Sunday in tabernacles and churches all over Belfast. The deal is a few words. You may hope that they will be well-chosen words, but what you will get is a few words. I should explain that I've known Hugh for the best part, I suppose, of 40 years. I'm not sure that's a thing that ought necessarily to be made too much of, but for a long time. He has had a distinguished career, indeed continues to have a distinguished career. In the 70s, he was the editor of a magazine called Scope in Belfast, which aimed to highlight social policy issues in favour of the dispossessed. He was a man of the left. In the 80s, he was the director of a body called the Northern Ireland Voluntary Trust, and it was in those days that we in fact worked together to develop and build the trust, now known as the Community Foundation for Northern Ireland, as a grant-making body and famously working in some very difficult parts of Belfast. Hardly need to remind people here of how difficult the 70s and 80s were in the north. I use the phrase work together slightly loosely. I was the chairman of the Board of Trustees and Hugh was the director and he did the work. He then moved to Dublin and was the director of the Combat Poverty Agency, a body which was ultimately so successful that it was abolished by the politicians that had created it. And then at the turn of the century he went to work for the European Commission in Brussels, and was in charge of the programme on poverty and social exclusion. And from 2006, although supposedly slightly retired, he's organised the European Social Policy Network. He had hoped in 2006 to devote half his time to that and half his time to painting. I think I'm right in saying that it hasn't quite worked out that way. I give this brief review of his career because he is a distinguished player in the field of public policy and has known the hassles and the trials and the stresses of that career. But he is lucky in two respects. First of all, to have the love and support of a good woman, and I can vouch for how important that is in public life and affairs. And secondly, he's also had a hinterland. Hinterland is I hope I'll be forgiven if I use examples from a neighbouring, I hope friendly jurisdiction. But Dennis Healy famously talked about the hinterland, which it was useful for a man in public life to have. He, of course, was famously indeed may still be, although he's now very elderly, I think, but he was a distinguished pianist and famously a good musician. Churchill also, as you will know, was a painter of some regard. Churchill said, "When I die," he was suitably and appropriately certain about his ultimate goal. Or, he said, "When I die, if I go to heaven," and he was again suitably cautious about his destination, he said, "I'll spend the first 2 million years of my time in heaven learning to paint." The artist we celebrate this evening will most certainly go to heaven and clearly will not need 2 million years to learn to paint. I am myself the owner, and very glad to be the owner, of one of Hugh's early works from the 1980s, when he accomplished some stunningly good bleak urban landscapes of Belfast. There are a couple of people I can see here this evening who may remember the Belfast of the 80s, but it was a pretty bleak place, and it was Belfast that was bleak rather than that Hugh was bleak. But his work was really very good indeed. The painting which I have is of houses of red brick buildings, a grey snow-laden sky, equalled I think only by Derek Hill's wonderful painting of Loch Garton in winter, in evoking the cold of the sky. Corrugated iron sheds, old warehouses, Belfast's own Rust Belt on the style of Cleveland and Detroit and other great cities. It was in fact a fine portrait of the gasworks. All that has been redeveloped. It's all been changed. There's a great white building which is a Halifax call centre. This is a view taken from what was pretty nearly the back door of our house in those days in Cromwell Road, looking across the gasworks. There's a Radisson Hotel. Nothing could be more modern than that. New office blocks, old wharves incorporating riverside walkways. Actually some quite interesting architecture, and I'm very glad to have the reminder of Hugh's paintings of that part of what was then my constituency 35 or 40 years ago. Times and people have changed. Hugh gave up, if I may paraphrase, or well actually not paraphrase but reverse the great statement of Peter Robinson. Hugh gave up the grey skies of Ulster for the colour and sunshine and sparkle of the Republic. and his own painting has moved on. Some of the sunshine and sparkle you will see in the hall, and some paintings there. All I can say is that looking round the room here and looking around at these paintings, it's a wonderful display of form and colour. Very appropriate for a man, as I say, who's given up the grey skies of Ulster for the sunshine of the Republic. Not a hint of rust in sight. I am delighted to have been asked to declare the exhibition open, and I wish both Hugh and Denise and the gallery every possible success with this exhibition and for the future.
Very much. Do you want to
Just a quick word of thanks. First of all, thank you very much, David and Fionnuala, for coming down, for opening it, from remembering the past. I'm going to go back to rooftops again. They still have a certain attraction. But also, just like to thank very much Denise and Deirdre, who were mad enough to hear I was painting still lifes and say have an exhibition without seeing them. I think they had it anyway. So thank you very much, and for hanging it so beautifully, because it almost looked like I designed it to fit the room, but I think Deirdre did that. It's fantastic. I suppose just a few other people to thank. You don't sort of learn to paint, I'm still learning, without advice and help from people. And actually, the first person who ever... I painted 2 still lifes before these in my life, just 2, about 12 years ago, when I went to a class in the College of Art, and Ethna Carr persuaded me to paint some still lifes. And I'm sorry she's not here. She died recently. But she was a fantastic teacher. And I wouldn't paint now if I hadn't gone to her class. I'd also like to mention 2 or 3 other people. Mary Burke, who has a painting group I go to regularly once a month, and other members of our painting group have been here. this exhibition wouldn't have happened without them keep encouraging me to keep going, because I was sort of experimenting with still life. So that painting group is very important. I have colleagues here from the Cathedral Studios. They're always supportive. We have great exchanges. Sometimes surprise each other by what we're doing, but it's a great place to paint. So thank you to all those people. Somebody else who couldn't be here, who opened the last exhibition, Fintan Farrell, who was here a couple of days ago. And Fintan was actually one of the people who persuaded me to keep painting still lifes as well, and really encouraged me to do it. So I really appreciate that. So all those people are vital to this exhibition happening. Of course, you don't paint and get time to paint unless your family tolerate it. So Hilary and Ben are here, so thank them for putting up with not only the time, but having things lying around the house, hanging in places, having to look at stuff all the time. So thank them very much for that, and for tolerating me disappearing off into the studio and forgetting what time it is, or that I was meant to cook dinner. A regular occurrence. I should also say thank you. Some of you will have noticed on the website that there is a brilliant video made of the paintings, and what's brilliant about it is the superb music in the background by a band, an Irish-American indie band, I'm told, whatever that means, by a group called I'm Not Left-Handed, which is actually my son, Daniel, who's in San Francisco, so can't be here.